Hello everyone, you're very welcome to this episode of Universal Design for Learning. In this episode I just want to think about people in design, and specifically a way of looking at people using the system model. So what do I mean when I say the system model? Well, a system view simply says, think about any system, a computer system, an information system, a human system, a service system as a black box for the moment. Start off by identifying what goes into a system and then identify what comes out of a system. So an example I might use is a Barbie doll factory. If I was across the road and I couldn't see how the Barbie doll factory worked, and I could just observe what's going in and what's coming out, what would I see what's going in? I'd see plastic and cloth and God knows makeup going into the Barbie doll factory, and I'd see shrink-wrapped boxed Barbie dolls coming out. So I might be able to infer somewhat how the inputs are changed into the outputs. And probably what I would guess is that there are a number of processes involved in changing the plastic input into the Barbie doll output. And I would probably guess that those processes are, some interact and some don't. Some are parallel and some are sequential. Some processes, one thing has to be done one after the other. If I want to put Barbie doll's hair on her head, I have to mold the head first. Whereas other things can be done in parallel. So as the head is being molded, the clothes can be being made at the same time as well. So if I'm allowed into the factory then and get a reasonable idea of how the processes actually work, then maybe I'm able to compare my predictions to the real process as it occurs, and I might even be able to improve efficiencies by looking at this as a system rather than as a factory. And I would see the same thing for education in general. I would see for students, the inputs we give them are lectures and assignment specifications and exams, and then the output we see are students learning, and that learning might be embodied in assignments they give back to us or exam scripts or whatever it is. So then we should try and figure out what processes are changing what we are giving them to the output they are producing. And if the output they're producing is wrong, what processes are causing that wrong to happen? But instead of thinking of a specific, I want to think of it generally about a person. So a person, if we viewed it as a system, has a number of inputs. We refer to those inputs as perception or sensory inputs. And we normally talk about the 5 classic senses of sight, hearing, taste, smell, and touch. And depending on the topic I'm teaching, it might depend on which channel I'm reaching to. If I'm teaching culinary arts, I might focus on taste. If I'm doing graphics, I might focus on vision. So it just depends on where we're going with it. But that's the kinds of inputs a human being has, the perceptual or sensory inputs. The outputs a person has, we generally refer to as their actions or activities, which can include writing and speaking and running and jumping and singing and playing the piano. And we often look specifically at dexterity and their fine and gross motor control, locomotion, moving around and reach the ability to grab things and pick them up. And then in between the inputs and outputs, we have the interacting processes. And specifically for the human being, it's the brain that are the interacting processes, and the different parts of the brain we sometimes refer to as the cognitive or cognition. And 3 things we might consider are the attentional mechanisms of the brain, that is, our brain's ability to focus on one thing and pay attention to a specific thing. Memory, and that could include long-term memory, short-term memory, and working memory, and then how language is encoded in the brain and how instructions are interpreted. So this is an interesting way for us to consider universal design. In terms of inputs, are there specific inputs we focus on? Does our topic being taught even allow us to teach using some of the senses? If it does, but we normally don't use them, we should try and mix it up and see if there's any way we can incorporate other senses into our teaching. In terms of the middle bit, the interacting processes, are we focusing and giving the student the opportunity to focus? Are we helping them improve their attentional mechanisms? Are we helping them learn things and move things from short-term to long-term memory? And language-wise, are we teaching them the correct terminology and ensuring that their understanding is correct? And then in terms of their activities, are we helping them write exam papers correctly or do assignments well? And are we helping them in the range of activities that we would expect a competent graduate of a particular course to be able to do? So I think this embodies a perspective on universal design for learning and says here are ways of considering the kinds of inputs we produce. Thanks very much. We'll see you on the next episode.